Hey everybody, welcome back to Beyond the Highlighter. Today we're talking about the importance of using literal translations when keywording your Bible and comparing some of the different translations that you might be using and how they stack up regarding quality Bible study. So it's no secret that everybody has their own preferences regarding which translation to use. And it's kind of become a funny jesting war between Christians. There's just some funny jokes out there that I like. There's one guy I know that he always refers to the New American Standard as the version that Moses brought down from Mount Sinai, which is clearly a joke, but it does emphasize just how much he loves that translation. You can't talk him out of it, really. And I remember even when I was at preaching school, I had a classmate that he just loved the English Standard Version, and he always referred to it as the Elohim Standard Version. Clearly a joke, but it does emphasize how much he loves that particular translation. Now, as for me, I am a New American Standard guy. It was the translation that I was introduced to when I first became a Christian, and over time I just learned just how readable it was, how accurate it was, and those two thoughts right there are actually the pillars on which the Lockman Foundation stands. They're the publishers of the New American Standard, and they said this on their website about that translation, and this is why I use it in the BKGs. They say that the NASB is a smooth-reading Bible translation with accuracy you can trust. Originally produced in 1971 and updated in 1995, the NASB is widely embraced and trusted as a literal English translation. The NASB provides superior accuracy with clarity and readability to inspire greater understanding. End quote. And honestly, I've found that to be true over the years, and I've really had no qualms with that translation. It gets it right more often than other translations, I personally believe. Now, you're probably attached to your own translation, and that's okay. But I found that to be true about the NASB. So that being said, I want to just say that you can still use the Bible keywording guides to keyword your Bible if you're not using the NASB, and I'm going to show you some examples of that today. So let's go ahead and look at the keyword kraton in the book of Hebrews, which is translated as better. So here's the concordance list for better in the New American Standard Bible. So notice that it is extremely consistent down the list. Even with that one use of greater in chapter 7, verse 7, it's a good translation because greater means better, and better means greater. It means the same thing, and so it's still a good word choice. And you'll see the same thing with the ESV, the English Standard Version. You'll notice that the translators here used superior on two different occasions, which again is not a big deal because superior is just another word for better and for greater, so you'll know what to mark when you come across these words. So again, the ESV is still a very user-friendly translation when it comes to the keywording guides. And if you're a King James reader or a New King James reader, with this particular word, better, you'll notice that the King James and the New King James are both extremely consistent, using the same English word every single time. That's not always the case for every word, but this certainly demonstrates that these translations are still great to keyword with. And then you have the NIV, the New International Version, and it uses superior and greater and better. And again, that's not a big deal since those words by and large mean the same thing. The translators still did a good job here. However, there are instances where the NIV may be a little confusing when it comes to these lists because the translation itself is pretty good, but it is not 100% literal all the time or a line-by-line translation. So to demonstrate this fact, let's look at the keyword believe in the Gospel of John. Again, believe is a word that you should be marking in John's Gospel. And notice that in John 4, verse 50, in the New American Standard, it says that the man believed the word that Jesus spoke to him. So you see that the word pisteuo for believed is present. However, in the same verse in the NIV, it says the man took Jesus at his word. Now, that may essentially mean the same thing, but the NIV reader will miss the keyword believe in that verse, whereas the NASB, ESV, KJV readers, they're going to see it. So overall, the NIV is a decent translation that is mostly literal, but not entirely literal, so be very careful if you're using it to keyword. So if you're using the BKG to mark these translations, it's going to be pretty easy for you to do since any differing words are going to be synonymous with the rare occasion of a difference in the NIV. And by the way, these aren't the only literal translations that are compatible, they're just some of the more popular ones I'm using by way of example. So next up is the NLT, that is the New Living Translation. You'll notice here that it is also fairly consistent, except for the occasional instance when the translators attempt to explain a meaning of a passage instead of giving the literal rendering. Notice the use of forgiveness in chapter 12, verse 24, instead of better. The NLT has a little more of this in it than the NIV does, and this process of explanation rather than literal rendering is called dynamic equivalency. It's where the translators believe a verse is hard to understand by using the original language, so instead they substitute it for what they believe is a more readable rendition. So be very careful when trying to keyword a dynamically equivalent translation like the NLT. And finally, just for kicks, here is how the Message stacks up against literal translations. So the Message actually isn't a translation at all, and it isn't intended to be. The author of this version, Eugene Peterson, he actually calls it the Bible in contemporary language, and so it is not based on any critical Greek or Hebrew manuscripts whatsoever. So notice the many differences when it comes to a word like better that only occurs 12 times. Look at all the question marks where neither the word nor a synonym is used in that passage. So even if you like to read versions like this, it is virtually impossible to keyword a commentary version of the Bible like the Message. So thanks again for tuning in. I hope this video has helped you even further in your keywording journey, so stay tuned for more to come, and I will see you next time.